So let me show you how I work Intarsia. This is just regular flat Intarsia. And it's not the only way to work Intarsia. It's just the way I found works best for me. First of all, I have my color-coded chart handy. So you can see it's there, and the row that I'm working on is marked. If you're interested, this is Knit Companion, but you can do the same thing using Stitch Fiddle and probably a variety of other programs. So I am working up to the point where my Intarsia begins. As you see, I have pretty much worked the chart. I'm down to the last couple of rows, and so I'll first show you the purl side, and then I will show you the knit side on the next row when I come back. So I work up to the Intarsia section. I bring the yarn over to the left, and I carefully find the correct thread that I'm going to work that section with. Now notice the threads look like a tangled mess, but actually they pull loose very easily because I am not using any bobbins and I'm not using any butterflies or anything else that catches. So any one of these threads at any time can be pulled and will come loose. You just pull them like that and they come right out. So that's what I'm doing at this point. I always take the yarn I am leaving and bring it across so that it will get caught underneath the new thread as I begin to work it. I work the section according to my chart. Now I'm ready to do a section of white. I bring my black thread across like that. I pick up the thread that I want to work with. You have to be very careful to catch the right thread, or else it will get a little bit messed up. I try to remember each time I start a new color section after I've knit one stitch, I take the old thread and give it a slight tug to give it the right tension on the needle to size that last stitch properly. Then I continue on in the new color. I come to the next section. I find the thread, I pull it loose. I have brought my old thread across the top of the stitches so that when I knit it, it will get caught by the new thread. I'll just continue to work in the same way until I get all the way across my Intarsia section. I am describing the color coding of charts in a different video, and it will be grouped together in the same playlist with this one. The point of color coding the charts, if you haven't already seen that video, is to tell you when to change colors, sometimes from one thread of a color to another thread of the same color. And the reason for doing that is to avoid large loops on the back of the Intarsia. We're not doing stranded knitting, and so all of the loops should be short like these. The chart calls for 3 white stitches at this point, so I'm going to knit 1 white stitch on top of the black stitch. Now I have to find that proper black thread, and it's a fairly long one, but it pulled right out. I initially started doing this with butterflies, and if you can imagine a butterfly tied to every one of these threads, they are just a mess. They get all wrapped around each other. You spend minutes every time you change colors trying to get them untangled and unwrapped. I find it easier to do Intarsia on the purl side because all of the threads are visible all the time. And now I have done my final color section, and I'm going to start using the other ball of thread that does the other half of the sweater. If I can actually purl a stitch. And there you go. That's how it looks. A lot of tangled threads, but they're all easily combable and straighten out. So that's how I purl Intarsia. Now I will show you how I knit Intarsia, which is pretty much the same way, except it's a little harder to see the threads. Sometimes you have to search for them. I'll pause the video and start again when I get back to this section on the knit side. Now I'm ready to do this Intarsia section on the right side and on the knit side. You may wonder, if you know my patterns, they're knitted in the round. Why am I working this Intarsia flat on a sweater that is knitted in the round? Well, the answer to that is given in my video on knitting Intarsia in the round. I'll just say briefly, you knit around until you get to the end of row, which is indicated by a marker. And at that point, you turn around and start knitting in the other direction. All Intarsia is knitted flat. There's an Intarsia element on the back of the sweater, and then there's this one on the front. And so what I have just done is I purled across here, I knitted around to the end of the round marker, turned it around, and now I'm knitting back in the other direction. So I've come back to the Intarsia on the front, and this is actually the last row of my chart on the front. So now I will work the Intarsia from my chart, and you'll see how I do that, and it's pretty much the same as the other side. I think I said in the first part of the video that I try to remember to tighten the stitch after I have started one stitch in a new color, and then I proceeded across, probably not doing it at all. So I'm going to try to remember better this time. So first I put the old strand across the back of the knitting. I find the new strand, which in this case is down here. I pull it out. I knit it. And then I tug on the old strand just to tighten it up a bit. And then I do the rest of that color section. Change to the next strand. Put that one across. Oh, what was I working with? I was working with this one. Put it across there. Find the correct strand to work the next color section with. It's on the back of the work. That's what makes this just a little bit tougher than when you purl. So you have to look on the back and try to find it. And then I'm going to knit 4 stitches in that color, white in this case. Did I forget again? I don't know. Put it across, find the right strand, pull it out. I'm not going to forget this time. I'm going to knit 1 stitch and then give a gentle tug on the old strand and then drop it and continue. There, I remembered again. It's not absolutely essential. I just think it probably neatens things up a bit if the tension on that one is kept a little bit taut. Now, as you see, it can be hard to find the right strand to pick up. And that would be this one, not this one, this one. They are crossed. Now I'm going to tug on it and then continue the rest of that color section. Turn it over, find the correct strand. It's not that one, it's this one. I'm going to pull it out. I think you can see why I don't use bobbins and butterflies. If I can just pull the thread out and work with it as easily as that, you know it's not that easy if you had a bobbin attached to it. Now, if you were working with large blocks of color, I just use the ball of yarn itself. And that works just fine also. In the video on knitting in the round, I was only working large blocks of color, so all of my color sections were attached to a ball of yarn. And this final one is attached to a ball of yarn because it's going to knit this whole section of the sweater up to the end of round around here. So I'll knit one stitch, tighten up the last one, and then be on my way. That was the last row of this Intarsia chart. And so when I come back, I'll come back using this same white thread, and I'll just purl across all these stitches and all the way around, and I will get rid of the other ball of yarn that was used on this half of the sweater. So that's how I do Intarsia on both the purl side and on the knit side. Happy knitting!